I always remember a situation that happened with me. This goes back a number of years, and in fact, this happened to me on my way to California. I was flying out. It was 2 days before the Passover holiday, and I was called out by Chabad to address a very important parlor meeting. I'm not going to go into details, and it was just only 2 days before Yontif. And I don't have to tell you, being the rabbi of a large synagogue, I have the responsibility of taking care of the chametz and all the different questions that people were calling in, and to see to it to make the preparations for the Yontif of Pesach. But much pressure was brought upon me, and I felt that I had no other way but to answer the call. It was somewhat of an emergency. Now, you know that Erev Pesach, in the morning, we usually make a siyum b'chorim, it's called. A siyum means the completion as we had last Sunday. A siyum for the firstborns, which means that because of the fact that the firstborns Egyptians were smited the night of Pesach, and they died, and the Jews' firstborns were spared, therefore the firstborns would have to fast on the eve of Passover. However, because we don't have the strength to fast, and Almighty God is good to his people, we have our rabbis have arranged that if there is a seudas mitzvah, if there is a seuda in honor of a specific mitzvah, then the individual is permitted to eat of that party. Completing a part of the Talmud, one of the tractates, is a reason for a celebration. And we could invite our friends to come and join with us in the celebration. And so the rabbi who makes the siyum in the synagogue invites all the people who are in the synagogue, all the firstborns, to join him in a l'chaim and to sort of partake of some of the delicacies, the refreshments that were prepared, so he can break his fast, and then he's allowed to eat already for the rest of the day. Anyway, I was not yet ready with my siyum. I had a few pages to finish in the tractate, and I was flying in first class, and there was no one sitting next to me, and so I decided that I would just make myself comfortable. I took along the tractate with me, and as I was sitting on the plane and we were flying, I continued to study, to prepare myself so that when I returned on the next day to New York, I would be ready with a siyum for Erev Pesach. Now, in my first class, there was a hostess, a very beautiful Swedish young lady who was taking care of the people. And I noticed that she walked up and back, up and back, up and back. And she, every time she walked past my seat and saw me studying, she sort of stopped for a moment and concentrated. And I didn't know what's her business, what I'm doing. But anyway, it came feeding time. Feeding time, I closed the Gemara, and I waited for my kosher tray to be presented to me, and she brought it over to me, and she gave it to me. I thanked her very much, and I broke the seal, and I sat down and began to eat. As she got through handing out the trays to the other people, the seat next to me was empty. She sits down next to me. And this was a little bit strange. I'm glad my wife wasn't there with me to watch this. And she sits down next to me, and she begins a conversation. She says, "You know, I'm very envious of you people. You Jewish people don't waste a minute. I noticed from the moment you sat down on the plane, you've been studying, you've been reading. What were you doing?" And I explained to her this whole concept of completing the tractate, and I didn't have time to do it before, and I'm on my way, and so on and so forth. And she was very fascinated by this. And then she says to me, "You know, I'm dating a Jewish young man." I says, "That's lovely. That's a wonderful thing. Where did you meet him?" She says, "So I met him on the plane." I says, "Where are you from?" She says, "I'm from Sweden." I said, that's very nice. Tell me, are you contemplating marriage?" She says, "Yes, I am." I says, "Have you ever discussed some of the problems of an intermarriage?" She says, "Yes, I did." "And how did you make out?" She says, "Well, we have our differences, and really we have some problems, and we haven't yet reconciled them all." I says to her, "Do you really think that you can make a go of it? Don't forget you're going to have children, and if you bring children into the world, the Jews will reject them, and the Gentiles will reject them because they're not Jewish, they're not Jewish. They are sort of the blank page between the Old Testament and the New, and why give them this kind of a status? Why torture them for something which they are not really responsible for?" And she says, "Well, you know, you seem to be saying something that makes a lot of sense, and we've been thinking a great deal about this." Then all of a sudden she turns to me, she says, "You know, I want to tell you something, Rabbi. You are a rabbi, aren't you? I says, yes, I am. I happen to be one. She says, I am strongly thinking of breaking up with this young man as much as I love him. And the reason is, she says, and this is her terminology verbatim, she said to me, I don't think I could really uproot that which was concretized in my heart from my childhood days in the Catholic Church, with the things that I've heard from my priests and the things that I've heard from my family really sort of gave me a slant, which is a little different than the Jewish approach. And I would have to think that I would be really getting myself involved in a very serious situation. So I'm very seriously contemplating breaking up. And I said to her, I appreciate your honesty, and I really think you're really terrific, because you are being honest with yourself and you're being honest with your friend, and in order not to hurt him or to hurt yourself, you are thinking what you do, and I do hope you make the right decision.